Hello, everyone. Hi, just waiting for some participants to come in. Hope it's all going well. Hope you've had a good Sunday morning so far. If you're watching this on catch-up, it is midday on Remembrance Sunday, the 12th of November. Should be the 11th, but it's the 12th. Oh, yes, hello. Somebody has joined. I can see the participants coming in. Welcome to my talk. This is the talk on teaching recent German history, and I will be focusing particularly on the teaching of the Holocaust as a very important topic. We're expecting about 57 people. That will be lovely, but a lot of you will be watching this on catch-up. I will start the talk at about 3 minutes past 12, and then I will make the meeting controls disappear so that you get a clear view of the slides, and hopefully it will be helpful for you and enjoyable and thought-provoking. That is, of course, the whole idea. I trust that we have some good German teachers amongst the audience. Willkommen und nett, dass Sie sich eingeklinkt haben hier bei uns heute. That's lovely. Hello, there's another one coming. It'll be nice to see how many end up in total. It's my first talk ever on the Language Show platform, and I'm delighted that I can make a contribution. Thank you. Hello. I can see the first hand signals. Delighted that I can make a contribution because it is something that is very important to me. It's something that is very close to my heart, that I think every young person these days should know about. And of course, it has been particularly poignant when I planned this talk. We were very far from the upheaval in Gaza at the moment. So this has taken on a new significance in the light of recent events. I will not focus on that, but I will mention that it's probably important that you have sensitivity, particularly at the moment when you are talking about the Holocaust. We have got quite a lot of students in my school where tempers really run high on both sides, the support for the Palestinians, as well as the support for the Israelis. I teach at St. Paul's Girls' School, and we're a very diverse community in central London. So there's a lot of students, a lot of girls in my case, from different parts of religious communities. So that's very interesting. It makes for very interesting discussions. We have roundtable discussions. We have got, and I hope your schools do that as well, the pastoral team set aside sessions where students can come and talk to them if they have got any concerns, any worries about the Palestinian conflict. So that is something I think that is essential at the moment because the children are very engaged in these questions. Of course, this also clashes with the marches in central London. And I'm so sorry to hear that there has been a bit of escalation yesterday and people have been arrested. The far right, of course, is coming back up. But as I said, I will not touch on that in particular. I will talk today mainly about the teaching of the Holocaust. And what I've done, rather than give you links for clicking on, I have put the keywords of this session, of the resources that I'm showing you into the slides. So you can Google those, and then you can familiarize yourself with what I think is a very nice array of resources from very different communities. So I think I shall start. I shall share my screen with you and make sure that this is all going well. So you should see some Stolpersteine here, and I will just make the, hang on, I will just make the, I knew this would happen. No, I will just, yes, sorry about that. Teething problems. Start again. I will just make sure that everything is fine, that I will show the slides big. That should be the case now. And now I will want to hide the floating meeting control so that you don't see this annoying bar at the top. This should work in hopefully 10 seconds, as long as my cursor behaves. Just a minute, here it is, hopefully. No, still not. Fourth time lucky. It worked, of course, in the practice run, didn't it? Sorry about that. Just have another sip of water or coffee. Sorry about that. Always the case. My last talk, it happened as well. Here we are. Hide floating meeting controls. Okay, so here we are, teaching recent history in German lessons with particular focus on the Holocaust. I have put my email address at the end so that you can contact me if you have any particular questions on my resources that I have chosen from the different areas. I'm doing this talk because often teachers are quite scared how to teach the Holocaust, how to handle the topic, the emotional weight of this topic. Often colleagues are worried that they're not informed enough, that they haven't got enough knowledge of history, worried how it's going to be received by the students because it's emotionally so loaded. So my intention is to make it a little bit easier, to give you some ideas of approaches that have worked for me in the past. I have been teaching this topic in my German lessons for many, many years, mainly in the sixth form. And when we do literature in the sixth form, I always choose a work that touches on the Holocaust, because I feel that young people these days, with the slightly cursory teaching of history that we have, don't always get the full picture. And it is important if they get it from a German perspective, as well as from an English perspective, because of course in England here, there's a particular view of the war and of the Nazis. So we try to balance this in our lessons. I was also very disconcerted that on a recent school trip in October half term, my colleague took a bunch of kids over to Berlin, and there is definitely a rise in anti-Semitist feeling. Molotov cocktails were being thrown at the synagogue, which I was shocked about. I thought the Germans had learned from history because we have done so much to make sure that we look back and understand our history and work towards a good understanding of a new Germany. And it's quite nice being, in a way, part of a new nation, a nation that is 75 years old, which has rewritten all its laws and really done a lot on Vergangenheitsbewältigung. This is, of course, the key word. So I hope that you are able to bring that across in your lessons as well. Where do you begin? Easy to begin in the sixth form when you teach literature. I'm teaching Der Vorleser at the moment by Bernhard Schlink. A very good book, very interesting writing. Also, the way it is written is fantastic. And then within that, we look at some resources. We use AQA exam board. And it's quite nice because my colleague is from Potsdam, so she covers all the Wiedervereinigung. And she does Das Leben der anderen, and I'm a Wessi, so I cover the Holocaust. And as I said, you will want to be really sensitive when teaching this difficult topic because tempers will run high. Saying that, my German lessons talking about the Holocaust, the best ones have always been when I've had some Jewish students in my lessons, because then the conversation often turns personal. They're usually happy to share their family history with us. And then the other students in the class feel that they somehow own this topic. And that has always been very, very positive. Where do you begin? Well, today is a good day. What you call Remembrance Day in this country, we call Volkstrauertag. There are two. There is Volkstrauertag and Totensonntag. Of course, other than in England, we do not have military parades in this country, in our country, because we cannot possibly do that. We cannot commemorate losing the war in such a spectacular fashion and having the murder of 6 million Jews on our conscience. So the commemorations in the Bundestag are always of a quite calm nature. You can see here, it is quite an understated affair, but they always invite a former Holocaust survivor, usually. There are not that many left now. A few years ago, there was the amazing Anita Lasker-Wallfisch that came and spoke. She is one of those girls that played in the Auschwitz orchestra. She's a famous cellist. So she went on from there to become an international celebrity playing the cello. But there will always be somebody notable that speaks at these events. The Volksbund in Germany has also got a Gedenkportal. So here, for example, if you're looking for some German resources, you could type in Volksbund, Volkstrauertag, Gedenkportal, and then you get these different images, you get these different links, Erinnerung an das Kriegsende vor 78 Jahren, so they commemorate the end of the war here very, very well. And you get different aspects, you get extracts from different speeches, and the whole thing is rolled up quite comprehensively. Another good thing for English students is to bring in the king. And of course, he came over to Berlin recently after becoming King of England and made a speech in the Bundestag, partly in German, partly in English. And it is quite amazing to hear the King of England speak in German and speak about the past and the lessons that he drew from the past. So he talks about Bedrohungen unserer Werte, and that is about the rise of the far right, the rise of anti-Semitism that is raising its ugly head yet again in the light of recent circumstances. This was, of course, before the Gaza conflict, but the topic is always there. The Holocaust Memorial Day is a very good place too to look. They have an interesting theme every year. You can look back on past years. The theme for 2024 is the fragility of freedom. Holocaust Memorial Day is always centered around the liberation of Auschwitz. So you will see images of Auschwitz, and we are very much in the thick of a conflict. So the fragility of freedom is very much an important topic. So you can explore that with your students. I found generally that even in the sixth form, their German knowledge is not yet good enough to really explore this theme in depth in German. So I always like to give a mix of resources of German and English. And there's also the Holocaust Memorial Trust. Again, lots of resources, also how to bring in the younger children that are not so knowledgeable about the topic or do not understand the depth of the topic just yet. Saying that, in primary school, a lot of the kids read, for example, the Diary of Anne Frank. So that's often going really well. And they come to us in secondary schools with already some good knowledge, and they know about the war and they know about the Holocaust, but it has to be taught or discussed in quite a sensitive way. So the 27. Januar is the Holocaust Gedenktag, and of course the European Parliament are quite leading in putting out some resources, so they will always in the Europarat have a website, an updated website for resources for that occasion, for that event. It's also interesting to teach the Holocaust through buildings, I think. So, for example, the Neue Wache in Berlin is the perfect place. This amazing building in Berlin, which used to be a Nazi, no, before that, to commemorate the Franco-Prussian War, and then a Nazi place, which of course glorified the Nazi ideology. Then it was East Berlin, and then it became a Mahnmal, für ewige Mahnmal, für den ewigen Soldaten. And then after the Wende, after the fall of the wall, they put in this incredible statue by Käthe Kollwitz, a large version of Käthe Kollwitz's main amazing Pietà. It's a Pietà, so that's a mother holding her dead son. Of course, Käthe Kollwitz was very affected by the First World War. Her own son died in the First World War, and she has done many memorials to commemorate that. And that is very, very poignant, and the children usually find that very moving when they see that, a mother holding her dead son. Talking about architecture, so for example, I show pictures of the Jüdische Museum in Berlin, and I say, why is it built in this strange, incongruous way? Why is there a whole sea of metal faces on the floor? And would you step on these faces, or would you politely not step on them, step aside? I remember standing there and thinking, oh my God, there's people walking on these? I couldn't do that. So it's interesting to have a comparison of the reactions of the students. And of course, that very incongruous shape of the building itself, and this darkness and the coldness of the building. Very, very interesting to explore that. The Jüdische Museum has got a Gedenkportal as well. And as you can see here, it says straight away, unsere Gedanken sind bei allen die von den Terrorangriffen auf Israel betroffen sind. This was early on, but of course this is now developing into the Angriffe auf Gaza as well. And it has lecture series, it has discussions, it has topics in different languages that can prepare you for a visit, or you can take your kids on a school trip, or some children will have been there and they can talk firsthand about the experience that they've had. Die Synagoge in der Oranienburger Straße is an amazing building to teach the Holocaust through, because when you go in, it is not the full building anymore. So you walk in and there's just a wall with a big picture of what it used to look like. So you could show pictures of the synagogue and then talk about the Jewish community in Preußen, and that they were very liberal in the late 1700s, very open to influx of Jews, the Huguenots, all that movement, touching on that. And then the Jews felt very safe. And then the terrible rise of the Nazis and the persecution of the Jews, and how did that feel for people that lived through it. Again, they have got interesting resources, materials. They also have a lot of materials about the Judentum itself. Your students might not be very knowledgeable about what the Jewish community are, who they are, what their rituals are, what their celebrations are. So the Jüdische Gemeinde has got a lot of material on that. It's great. And here at the top, you can see Sprache. So you can click on various different languages. And of course, there's the big Holocaust memorial in Berlin. And I always ask my students, what impression does it make if a country puts such a memorial right into the center of its capital, right next to the Brandenburger Tor, right next to the Reichstag? What message does that give? And is that message good enough? Is that message important? Do people understand this? It's very, when you have these discussions, I find them a lot easier in English, because they can really express their feelings and their emotions that way. So that works very well, has always worked very well for me. Stolpersteine I find very moving, and children usually as well. And they really have a big impact. If you walk through the streets and all of a sudden you stop in front of this little plaque, and then it says the name and the date, and it depends on the fate of the individual person. Sometimes it says erniedrigt, and then ermordet. So those are very strong words. I had an interesting experience. A new colleague of mine, our lovely new head of biology, she is Jewish, and her family came over from Germany to Britain. And she wasn't aware of some of the things. So I did some research for her on the Stolperstein for her uncle. An interesting discussion. And if your students have that too, and they are willing to share that, then that makes for really fascinating reading. And again, this personal element that comes in. However, always be careful to ask the student or their parents if they are happy to share that history with us in class. Not just Germany, of course, there is also Vienna, the Judenplatz Holocaust Memorial in Vienna. So you could say, how does the Holocaust Memorial in Vienna differ from the one in Berlin? And what do you think? They have just extended, because that was all there was. They have just extended that with a wall of names. And how do the students feel about that? How does that reflect about the country, thinking back upon its past? I've got a very good book, actually, which, sorry about that, hang on, just thought of this, which won the German Book Prize very recently, I think in 2018, Geraldine Schwarz, interesting historian, Erinnerungen einer Europäerin, and she writes a book called Die Gedächtnislosen. I shall put that in the chat. And this is interesting because she compares the Vergangenheitsbewältigung in different European countries. So Austria and Italy, France, Eastern European countries, Poland, and for example, the legislation in Poland, that it is illegal now to mention that Poles were also involved in the Holocaust or were helpers of the Nazis. And what does that say about that nation? I'm not making judgments, I'm just simply putting it out there. Of course, the center in Britain, in this country, is the Wiener Holocaust Library. Very interesting collection, amazing collection of original materials from the people that came over, refugees from Germany, Flüchtlinge, also from the Kindertransport, and what they brought. Fascinating, and they're always looking for volunteers to help them translate their resources or organize their materials. Interesting for your students, for example, to go there, but careful, because it's a real weight of the Holocaust. I find that, maybe I feel it more because I'm German, the weight of the past really feels heavy in these buildings. So be careful what you show them and how you prepare them for that. But they have a great collection, and Dr. Stefanie Rauch is the head of the collection. She is also very happy to advise you on any materials that you might want to use, any resources that you're looking for. So they can be approached, and they will be very hands-on in guiding you through the process of Vergangenheitsbewältigung with your students. Of course, the Deutsche Historische Museum also does very good work in that field. They have a lovely Lebendiges Museum online, LEMO. And this is just a still, but you can click through this Zeitstrahl, again, comes in different languages, and then all the different eras of German history come up. And underneath each one of them, you see different themes, different Zeitzeugendokument, different aspects and items that they have collected, that they explain. They also have a big interior collection when you go to the museum. So, for example, on a school trip to Berlin, it's a great place to spend a morning or an afternoon to make sure the students see these resources firsthand. I always suggest that you don't spend too long and that the kids have some time to reflect and think. So rather do it in small, short spaces. But of course, we don't have many language lessons anyway. We have 3 periods a week in the Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. So it's also good to look, can I perhaps link up with the RS department, for example, on days of Jewish festivals? Can we do some parallel teaching? Can I bring in some German resources? Can we talk about it from a Holocaust perspective? Or you do some work with the history department on days like today, Remembrance Day. For example, I gave an assembly once on Remembrance Day, how we commemorate it in Germany. So there are a lot of possibilities of crossover. And then you can show them some of these resources in English. UCL have a very good Center for Holocaust Education, and they give a lot of classroom materials. Indeed, they publish a book, Understanding the Holocaust, for Key Stage 3 students. So you can apply there, and they send you a set of 30 free copies for your students that you could use as a Klassensatz, and of course many online materials, and they're very good in supporting that with work from their experts in the center. They also offer some CPD, so you can do some courses if you feel that your knowledge of the Holocaust is not as comprehensive as you would like it to be. They offer some CPD, very good. You can sign up for a course and they will guide you through this. And what was the Holocaust? How do I teach it? And why does it matter? Is their motto. I think that's flexible modules, and it's all free of charge. So make use of that. Or even if you've taught the subject for a long time, like myself, it's very nice and very good to have a refresher course and to see new perspectives. Similarly, the Royal Holloway, they have a Holocaust Research Institute, which they join with many different universities across Europe. This even post-Brexit, they are still active in that. And I love their list of lecturers, so you can see how far-reaching this is. So we have a professor of modern history, reader in Holocaust studies, contemporary literature, film studies, modern Greek history, Eastern European Jewish studies. So it's a wide field, and they really draw on expertise from a great number of resources. Also good to have a look from across the pond. How do they teach the Holocaust at a different perspective to us? The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. If you are fortunate enough to have been there, or your students, probably not so easy running a school trip to Washington, D.C., but if you can, fascinating place, a very important museum with a very big collection on the National Mile. I can really recommend a visit there. And they have an interesting set of sentences. And again, it says requires a high level of sensitivity and give you some guidance on what to do when you teach the Holocaust. So avoid simple answers to complex questions. Avoid romanticizing history. And believe it or not, it can be done with the Holocaust. It can be romanticized. We don't want that. We don't want it to be too stark so that your students are not traumatized, but we don't want it to be romanticized either. So for example, stories like Anne Frank can easily be romanticized. So, and don't just give them 6 million Jews died, translate the statistics into people and make them understand what that really means. What does it mean, 6 million people? That's 2/3 of the population of London. So put it into perspective that they can understand. Again, even online, because if you can't go there in person, they give you a really good help portal. Museum educators will connect with you with classroom resources and give you guidance on how to use their resources properly. Deutsche Welle, if you want to link into German materials, Deutsche Welle do a really good Holocaust portal. And you can see at the top, Israel at War. So they are linking in, and they also link in with Black History Month, for example, German colonialism. They have various different aspects, and they put this, they actualize this all the time, and they give you a really good idea of what happened in the past. The language is quite demanding, but of course, on Deutsche Welle, you have the option of clicking on different languages. So here they are. So even if your students are not fully good English speakers, if they are refugees, for example, you have got the option of other languages where they can look at these resources. Most of them are translated. Not so sure whether all the resources are translated into Hausa, but at least some of the guidance on the website is accessible in all these different languages. And they do nice updated sites as well. These are about a week old when I put this talk together. Talk about Germany's unique relationship with Israel, maybe other relationship than the European Union, and of course the role of Austria, the birthplace of Hitler, and how the Austrians dealt with the war, the rise of the neo-Nazis, the rise of the AfD, and how threatened we feel about that, the difficulty of keeping democracy alive, keeping the links with the past, the links with Israel. It is a very contentious topic, and fascinating to explore this in the past as well as in the present, and then to think of what it will be like in the future. Also good, they give you up-to-date things like Coco Chanel fashion item. So you can look and go to the V&A with your students. Then you have a bit of French if you are a dual linguist. The exhibition also talks about her dubious Nazi relations. She had an affair with a leading Nazi occupier in France, in Paris, to keep her fashion house alive, basically. So what does that say about her as a person? Coco Chanel, a controversial woman, fascinating, great genius in terms of fashion, but very difficult person and a complex person to explore. And there's also a very good documentary on BBC, which is still on the iPlayer, Coco Chanel Unbuttoned. So you could combine a bit of fashion at the V&A and a bit of Holocaust teaching at the same time. I like going into different websites. So the United States do, for example, the Holocaust Museum in Washington, in their Holocaust Encyclopedia, also talk about the Holocaust in France, the Verdif Roundup. Very interesting to explore this. And then maybe you could team up with a French colleague and look at the aspects of the Holocaust in France. There is also the Mémorial de la Shoah, which is in Drancy, and they have got a good website, a lot of English, but also in French. And then you say, why do the French call it La Shoah rather than the Holocaust? And what does that mean? And you can do language comparisons. Very, very interesting to explore that, maybe team up with one of your French colleagues in order to do that. You can do that at all stages, maybe at key stage 4 and 5, but even at key stage 3. And they give you a slightly different view on the Holocaust because they have got a different approach. They were occupied by the Germans. So they have that extra layer of resistance and the maquis. So you can talk about that and the shame that the French feel these days of having collaborated. What is a collaborateur? That is a very interesting aspect too. Die Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung gives, of course, some materials, Themenblätter im Unterricht. I find them quite difficult. They are not very accessible, even for A-level students, but they might be good for reading for you to prepare yourself. And there is also from the Europarat again, the organization of the European Union, excursion to the past, teaching for the future, and how do we bridge that gap from the past to the future versus via the present. Very interesting, thought-provoking ideas here. Then, of course, you could link this to PSHE, never be a bystander. What is a bystander? How does this work? How does this still affect us today? Again, the European Parliament gives out very good materials accessible in different languages. And finally, a link collection that I value very much is Yad Vashem, which is calls itself the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, which is the Holocaust Memorial in Israel, in Jerusalem. I personally haven't been to the Yad Vashem. I've always wanted to go. I've got a trip booked to Israel for next October, and I have no idea whether we'll be going or not. I will just have to see. But online, they are, again, very supportive. They have published a lot of different materials. They have a database of materials, the Jewish life before the Holocaust, linking the Holocaust to the arts. There's also a fascinating book called, sorry about that, I'll be back in a second. Typical, can't find it now. It's called The Rape of Europa. And it's about all the art theft that has gone on under the Nazis. All the appropriation of artworks from Jewish families in Germany, and then the stealing of all the artworks in all the countries that they occupied, and unfortunately, awfully many countries that the Nazis occupied. I know from a former student who works at Christie's that they have still got 2 permanent desks at Christie's only dealing with Nazi loot art. So that will be very, very interesting. The Holocaust in the arts, maybe in form of art, or also in form of literature. So you could look at poetry, for example, like Paul Celan, Todesfuge, or recent Anselm Kiefer, for example, did an exhibition which is very much focused on Vergangenheitsbewältigung and the Holocaust, and he picks up on the themes of Paul Celan, Todesfuge. Very, very fascinating. Yad Vashem also have some very good videos. Again, be careful and monitor your students' reaction. You can choose different ways of how to teach that. Sometimes I let them look at it by themselves without saying much, because some of the images that they will see are truly gruesome, and they might need preparing for that. It is not easy for us adults, us teachers either, to look at this and to really fully keep calm about that. So I've done various approaches via discussion beforehand, discussion after. Just let them look at it quietly in peace and let them go away, and then we talk the next lesson. So choose according to the class that you have, according to the students and their nationalities that you have in your group. Anti-Semitism is, of course, at the moment incredibly topical because of the conflict of Israel and Gaza. So have a discussion about that. If you have a philosophy department, you might, or history or RS, please do link up and talk, or politics, and talk about the rise of populism, online hate speech. All these things can link very well into the teaching of the Holocaust. So you can make it really topical and show them firsthand that the discussion of that topic is still very, very alive today, and very important that they understand the historical context. The Yad Vashem also have some very good German resources, and I like that very much. Den Holocaust mit Hilfe von Fotografien unterrichten. Again, it gives your students a chance to look at these materials and to take it in and to digest it and to process it without being too emotionally driven in the discussion, have a subsequent discussion, again, completely as you see fit with your classes. But the photo documenta that they have are incredible. They have a huge amount of different materials. So this is very rich pickings. They also publish an e-newsletter für die deutschsprachigen Länder, which you can subscribe to as a German teacher, and then you have it all in German. Then you can juxtapose that with the website in English, and then maybe encourage your German A-level students to read more about this in German in the target language and see how much they understand. That's always very helpful. And that is it. Thank you. Sorry, a bit of an abrupt end, but I think Yad Vashem is, I try to stagger that a little bit. And here is my email address at my school. If you want to personally ask me any questions that you have not got time for, or of course the chat function doesn't work, if you're looking at this subsequently, then please do email me. I'm very happy for you to do that, and very happy for you to ask me direct questions. Hello, I am now back on my main screen. I see that we have 15 participants. Thank you very much, Angelica. That's very nice. I'm just going to have a look in the chat to see what you have put and if there's anything I can help you with. And lovely if you can put some links. Gosh, deportation. Yes. And then, yes, I have put all the titles in. The name of the book, okay, I shall put that in the chat now. The name of the book is The Rape of Europa. And the other book that I mentioned, hang on. Here it is, I've put it aside. The other book that I mentioned is called Die Gedächtnislosen by Geraldine Schwarz. Die Gedächtnislosen, with an umlaut, of course. Sorry about that, but it's much quicker just typing it up like that. Interesting point, obsessed with the Second World War. I think that's a very real threat in this country, that young people are soaked up in this, that they are thinking, oh my God, yes, the Nazi stuff was amazing. They have, of course, got that awful persuasive power. So if you look at things like Olympia by Leni Riefenstahl, or you look at the Triumph des Willens, films like that, they are emotionally very demanding. So be careful how you show such resources. Personally, I think, you know, when I first came to this country in the late 80s to England, there was a war film every weekend on the main channels. These channels have now gone off more privately, so that people have to look for them, but there are still a huge amount of resources, a lot of films. Yeah, guilty of avoiding this topic in class. I don't blame you. Due to pressure to prepare them for the exams, you might like to talk to your colleagues of how you introduce that, that you take some lessons out, maybe around the memorials. It's easily done. I try not to avoid the topic because it's just too important, I think, to avoid. But yes, with the continued assessment that we now have, it's very difficult very difficult to fit it in sometimes. Sorry, you still don't see the titles of the books. They are here in the chat. Die Gedächtnislosen, and the other one, yeah, the other one was The Rape of Europa. I can't remember the author, but it's about art theft by the Nazis and the different preparations that the different countries had. Okay. Yes, summer term is a good time when, or after the end of year exams, when it's not totally usurped by sports day and things like that, or activities week. You know, we always try to fit so much in, but it would be good, or you could plan a week or an event in your school across different departments, not just the different language departments, so that people can link up and work together to put a project together, or a couple of days together, or do a visit to a museum, so that you can look at that together and involve your students. Ask your students what they want to see. I will just have a quick look in Q&A. No open questions. Excellent. Very good. Okay, yeah, we've got 5 more minutes. You've been a very patient audience. It's been a pleasure giving this talk, as much as it can be a pleasure giving a talk about the Holocaust. But I think it is very important to address this topic and to address it in a way that is palatable for our students. Be very interesting to see. Maybe you can put something in the chat for me, how many of you are actively involved in teaching the Holocaust in your school, in your lessons? And is it only limited to... Oh yeah, the titles are in the slide. The titles are in the slides. Please Google the terms that I have used. You will find it online. Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, I've done that. Interesting. You have many students from the Israeli embassy in your school. Very interesting. Maybe you could also connect it with a visit to a Jewish community, that a Holocaust survivor or a rabbi comes into your school and gives a talk. We've had some very, very interesting talks that way, with huge discussions with students. They feel, or in the students' own RS society that they run, or the different Jewish festivals. Thank you. Some lovely compliments here. Yeah, you do the British style Remembrance Day assembly. I think it is good for them to have a look across Europe or across the pond to see how other countries commemorate that. Or, for example, my partner is from New Zealand, and they have experienced the war very, very differently. More focus on the Pacific. So it is very interesting to compare notes. Yes, I agree. At the moment, there is blind hatred and a shocking rise in emotions at the moment. So it is very important to keep a cool head, but not to shy away from the topic, and to make sure that people really get it. Okay, we have 3 more minutes. Is there anything anybody else would like to say? I'll just check the Q&A again. No open questions. Okay, so you're all concentrating on the chat. No, I said there are no links because I found that difficult to do. That's why, Anne Mackey this is, that's why I have put all the keywords in my slides. So you will see them there, and then please Google those keywords, and that's the way you will find them. So that's all. That's why I've done screenshots with Yad Vashem and the Holocaust Library, etc., so that you can take it from there. That's probably a lot quicker and easier. It's also great to just type in things like teaching the Holocaust in German lessons and see what comes up. That's how I started my search. Of course, I know a lot of these resources and use them, but it's always very inspirational to see what other new thoughts come up. No, the books are in the chat. So the books are just something that I pulled out of my shelf while I was talking to you, but I've given you the titles in the chat. Yes, they are in the chat. If you scroll up a little bit, they are from me. The Rape of Europa, and Brigitte has also repeated them. And you should see them from me. Die Gedächtnislosen by Geraldine Schwarz and The Rape of Europa. Can't remember the author, but it will come up very quickly if you go onto Amazon, for example, or even in Google. It will come up. Okay, well, it is 12:44. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for spending time on Remembrance Day morning. And thank you, and I hope it has been useful for you. And I shall now close the talk. Thank you so much. Some lovely thumbs coming up. That's nice. Can't see any of you, but I trust that you had a good time and have a very good rest of the weekend. Many thanks. Bye-bye. Auf Wiedersehen.